Hello doll friends, this is Michael Canadas with the Carmel Doll Shop and the Grovian Doll Museum. We are back at the Susan and Lou Nunez collection. They have not only opened their doors to all of us, they've opened their cabinets. Today we're going to do a study group on art in movement. So what we have in this vast collection that has all kinds of wonderful things, we have probably one of the most comprehensive study groups of what we would call waltzers. So I'm going to step back and let you have a little overview of pretty much the history of the automaton in the 19th century France, and these are what we would call waltzers, meaning that they are in the movement of dance. Sometimes they have a partner, and sometimes they are singles. What I find fascinating is with this group is it's basically two makers. You have Gustave Vichy and Théroude. Now, sometimes they're kind of hard to tell apart, but I think we're going to give you some clues of how to differentiate the two. So I think that we're going to start with the earliest. And I think that if I were going to pick on this, in this collection, I would go about in this area here, and there's some on the other part of the table. But I think I want to start with this one because this is exceptional. So we're in the mid-1860s, original clothes. And look at what they did with, now costuming. I think I should talk about costuming. Most of the time when you have an automaton, not always, but most of the time, they will be in original clothes. And this, you have an interesting situation where they've used satin, and then they have pieced it with blonde lace, and then Dresden paper. Little tiny buttons, but look at the besides the costume, the wig. And this is not mohair, this is not human hair, this is actually silk fibers that are all padded and then layers of the time, mid-1860s. Now, when we talk about automatons, we refer to the maker of the mechanism. They did not create heads. So they would get those from doll companies like Jumeau, or in this case, this is probably a Germanic head that came from Germany. They could buy those and utilize it on their figures. So they would create most of the body parts, hands, sometimes hands. And on this one, we're going to say that this one is probably a Théroude because it has wooden hands. When you see a Vichy, it will have metal hands. Another thing I want to point out to you, the fact that it's got very, very tiny, tiny little bamboo teeth. And if you notice that the mouth is barely open and you can just barely make out those little teeth. And this was kind of an unusual, in portraiture of this time, you're not going to see a lot of teeth showing. So even in dolls, this is very unusual. So here's another of this maker, which I think is exceptional. And the interesting thing is in the Nunez collection, there's almost two pieces identical. And one is in, if you like, pink or coral, and one is in blue. And again, you can see the lavish materials that were used in costuming these pieces. So in a lot of instances from a doll from this era, and I put this at the very early 1860s, it could be even into the 50s, it's a great example of how to dress a doll of that time frame. And here again, you can see now, because it's a bigger size, we have a bigger mouth opening, and we've got all those bamboo teeth. She probably had, well, we probably had more of a feather and a little more arrangement in her hair. But here we have also a little bit of, this is why we're not attributing this to Vichy. We are using leather hands. These could have been bought by a body maker and then easily attached. It would be very economic for the company to do that. But if you notice that the hands are always in motion, they're doing something. So I think she probably held a bouquet here, and then this hand is attached to the dress, which would help give it movement. Now, if I let her go, she would dance across the room, but it's a little bit dangerous, but you can see it would move, and then she would put a posy holder, I would assume, up to her face, or it could have been a handkerchief with some perfume. But she can still do her thing. So next we're going to move on to this little piece, and this is fascinating, completely original, and we have a partner, but I hope my cameraman can get that face of the gentleman. So he really, it's not a girl doll, that's definitely a he, and papier-mâché head. And then she is interesting because she's a papier-mâché with a wax coating. And as I said, totally original clothing. They're in fragile condition, but still spectacular. And for my friends that are out there that are sewers, wouldn't we would just do anything to look at this tiny, tiny soutache or braid of just minuscule scale, and that would be wonderful to have today. And I think we can say that this gentleman was definitely an endowed dancer because he's got a beautiful body shape. And that, we're going to wind it up in a second for you, but you can see beautiful hairstyles. And she's a little bit different because the previous pieces have had mohair and silk, and this one has actually got human hair. Now, I am going to say that this one is most likely a Théroude because we don't have the metal arms, which you'd find on a Vichy, even though they're both companies are doing this kind of work at the same time. So let's see if we can get this one to work. It's enchanting. So clearly our waltzing couple are fabulous dancers. They were hard for me to keep up with, but as we were winding her up, our attribution to this couple was correct. And here you can see on the cylinder that it's been marked in multiple places. Now we're in the mid to late 1860s, and the Bisque doll is now what everyone wants. So we've replaced the papier-mâché head with a Bisque head, and now we've also have a very, very elegant arms. Now what I think is very interesting about these arms is these must have been made for this company's specification because they're not standard arms. If you notice that her arm bends and this arm on this side curls over, so that way she could put her hand on his shoulder to do a proper waltz. But we're still using, for the male, we're using a wooden composition type of hand. Again, I think that this piece, and we have to be mindful of the fact that these are very, very old. I think this piece has had the silk replaced, but they have managed to keep the blonde lace, the flowers, the trim. You know, all textiles are marching towards the end of time. So at some point, every automaton, this is going to happen to them. They have mohair wigs, but we have basically the same canister, which I'm going to show you, that the other pieces have. 3 wheels, but this one has an improvement where the other piece you wound it and you let it go. This one has an on and off switch, which is really helpful. So we're going to turn it on and see what happens. Now think of it, the 19th century, how enchanting this is to see a mechanical toy just spin like that. And I'll give them a little space and see if they just keep going. And we hope they don't run into their partner, but I'm here to catch them. Oh, and then look at that movement. So that's not only waltzing. So the cams are making it do these different moves. So now we're just rolling, and then you can hear the cam go. So at some point, let's see if we... No, it's just moving. So there are different gears that make these different moves. And by the way, friends, if you have automatons, the more you operate them, the better. So this is a very good exercise today. Isn't that fun? Don't you just love that? Okay, well, you know, because of the way that we've displayed these on the table, we're going to go back into the late 50s and early 1860s. And again, this is another Théroude piece. But you can see that each automaton, even though it's the same mechanism, they are all, in a sense, a one of a kind. That has to do with the way they were costumed. Not that there were others made, but just where you place the bows, what you have in the hand, the hats, all of these things add up to be, each piece is a unique item. Now, you don't often see a lady wearing a hat, so I think that this is a great example of that. But I want you to see, look at these beautiful mellow flowers. And again, we have the papier-mâché head, I'm sure supplied by a German maker, with the open mouth and the teeth. The leather hands, again, probably supplied by a leather doll body maker. But again, positioned in a way that they're doing something. And in this case, we have everything in the hand. So we have a posy holder, or tassi-massi, if you like. And then we also have a handkerchief, which was really an important part of you know, the 18th, 19th, and a good part of the 20th century as an essential thing for a lady to have. And it would probably have been perfumed, so that way if she were going in an area that didn't smell so great, that she would put that up to her face. But again, we have the fantastic lace. This is, again, blonde lace, which is highly sought after, and French blue, but this is in all original condition, and you should expect, if you are getting something in all original condition, that there is going to be wear. Time marches on for textiles, but this is a very beautiful piece, and again, it's got the basic clockwork, and I'll show you that, because we can lift up her crinoline, and you can see that. And look at those little cute shoes. Those are, I think, are really darling. So I'm not going to let her loose because, but I'll show you what would happen. So if she could go on the table, she would probably just dart out. It's not going to have the curvature movement of dancing. It would just we could easily lose her. And I'm going to wind it up because I love for you to hear the sound. It's just a wonderful sound. So the first item we showed you, which was the twin of this, which was in blue, and now we're into this coral color, or it might have started out pink and just changed to this color. The costuming is, this costuming was meant to attract the upper echelon of society, people that were used to having their clothes made by Worth or Doucet, meant to be very appealing to them. And in the Nunez collection, you'll find a lot of items, whether they're dolls or they're furnishings, that are all based on things of the French court. And this piece is no exception. And of course, this color, I think I'm going to change my whole opinion. This was that beautiful coral color. It has not changed all that much, because if we lift that up, you can see that. But again, fantastic blonde lace, beautifully styled. And what tops it all off is this feminine and masculine. So you have the tricorn hat that gives it a very stylish look. And then I will also show, look at how they took just a piece of chenille and some Dresden paper, and they cut it out and they made a beautiful wrist ornament. I wouldn't call it a bracelet because they did it on both hands. And again, the leather hands are not like a standard doll. They're wired and put into a position of movement. And I just can't get over the amount of blonde lace that has been lavished on this. And then look at both fabrics are very, very light. And we have got this beautiful brocade design to scale. Again, we've got the papier-mâché head. In this case, she's got a mohair wig and the open mouth with top teeth and a couple of bottom teeth, but beautiful papier-mâché with, I think, a little bit of wax finish on it. So again, she's a waltzer, and my cameraman corrected me. They will go in circles. You just have to move the wheel. So the wheel could be straight, and they dart off in a straight line, or if you turn the wheel, then they will go around in circles. But these pieces with the wheels scare me to let them go free. So I'm going to give you an example of how it works. And now you should see she can really pound her fist. Now on this table, this one, which looks simple compared to some of the others, I think is a little bit different, because in my mind, this reminds me of a child, where it looks like the rest of the pieces are all ladies. Again, this has original clothes in beautiful condition, again with the tiniest little soutache trim or braid. Soutache trim is braid. So tiny little braid, beautiful Dresden paper. They've taken a very, very simple lines of the costume, where the others we've looked at are very complicated, but they've given it its detail by the trimming. Interesting back piece, and papier-mâché head. And this is one of the reasons I think this one is meant to be a child. We do not have a wig. We've got just the basic painted papier-mâché head, fairly full mouth with quite a few teeth, glass glass pupilless eyes. And the very special item on the whole piece is her hat. So this is what we would call a chapeau niçoise. So this was meant to be outdoors, where if you think about it, everything we've looked at so far is ball orientated, indoor living. So a chapeau niçoise, you would wear this out in the summertime in the full sun. The leather hands, and we're starting to see a trend here. This is what you can do with a big collection like the Nunez collection. You can compare. So again, we have leather arms. They are in situation, bent, fingers turned to create movement and activity. Let's see if we can get that. Well, the next piece I want to share with you from the Nunez collections, I would say looks can be deceiving. At a first glance, this looks like it's a very nice French fashion doll. And in fact, Susan and Lou have displayed this in a cabinet with other French fashion dolls. But if we take a look at, the first thing we're going to notice is that the hands are quite a bit different than you'd find on a play French fashion doll. They are the zinc hands that you almost always see these on a Vichy piece. And this, in fact, is a Vichy piece. Has a lovely reception costume, or it could be a walking costume. Fan, lorgnette, beautiful face, probably supplied to them by probably Barrois. And you can see, if you look in here, that most automatons, you will find that they would have a flanged neck, which means a neck that's been cut off and is going to be flat. And that is necessary for the movement. So not only is this a waltzer, it also has music. Now, before I show her work, I want you to see this getup that she has underneath here. So it's practically a float, like in a parade, a whole platform. So that gives us an indicator that there's more than just wheels to turn, that there's something else, which is music. So we're going to let's see how she does. I'm going to keep her from bumping into her friend. She's looking for a new partner. Come on, girl, you got to go this way. Come to me. But look at the power of that. It just goes like you wouldn't believe. And she's flicking the fan. And her lorgnette has gotten a little limp, but that can go to the workshop and get fixed. It's a powerhouse, I'm telling you. Oh, I see what it's doing. It's going in a circle. So with this marvelous powerhouse, what we learned by actually giving her the space to work, we kept thinking that she was trying to cut in on someone else's dance. But the reality is that she is designed to go in a circular motion. And even though the space that we have here is pretty large, it is not big enough for her. And that's the fun thing about having these work. And as I've said before, the more you work them, the better it is for them. Here we have another piece by the firm of Vichy. Again, it has the same platform that we looked at on the previous item. Oops, don't start yet. The show's not on yet. You can see it's basically the same very, very heavy box that has more than just the waltzing mechanism. It also has the musical box. But this one is a case book in fashion of the 1880s. I mean, look at this incredible ruching. This is all cotton back satin with actually brocades mixed in. So they would use the brocades as a, you have to see the back, as an accent piece. All the seaming that you would expect on a French fashion doll or a lady of the time. The fishtail train in the back. I think we could easily say that whoever was designing their costumes were looking at what was happening out on the streets of Paris and what people were wearing. It really is exceptional. Same mechanism basically as what we've looked at in the previous automaton, the lorgnette, the fan, same type of movement with the head with the flanged neck. But in this situation, we have a head that no doubt that it was supplied by the firm of Gautier. And then again, an unusual feature for an automaton is that you actually have a hat, meaning that it was meant to be outdoors. But hats were also, in some situations, worn as an indoor fashion statement. So this one gives a really a good indicator of, these are the zinc hands again, but they're realistically painted. And even though they're shellacked, I think at one point they would have matched the bisque tone, but as time goes by, they darken. And this would have been all connected to the mechanical parts of the piece. So I think that, you know, it's time for her to perform for you. So I'm going to give her a little power, and let's see her go. Okay, or maybe not. There she goes. Again, she wants to go in a circular motion, so we have to figure out which way she's going to go. Well, friends, if I had to pick one item in a category, because you could never pick in the Nunez collection of favorites, you'd have to go by categories. And then within the category, you have to break it down even more. So if I went into the category of mechanical waltzers couples, so I'm talking about couples now, this would be my pick. So what we have here is really a monumental pair of a pair of Vichy waltzers. The base that they're on are like some of the other pieces that we've seen, but they're that much bigger. We have heads supplied by Gautier with specialized arms. Wouldn't we all love to have all of our French fashion dolls have arms like these, which are amazing. And then the male is utilizing the standard Vichy zinc hands that were once upon a time the same color as the Bisque hands. He's a brown-eyed doll and she's a blue-eyed doll. The incredible thing are the costuming. That these are original, totally original costumes, and I would put this in about the 1870s, probably late 1870s. And I think that this is meant to be a fancy dress costume, meaning not totally authentic. It's meant for a costume ball, because it seems like we've got a few things going on. We've got the taste of the 18th century, which was all of the rage at that time. Remember, the Empress of France was a big, big collector of all things Marie Antoinette. So you've got a taste of, not exactly. But what I do think is fascinating to me, looking at the textiles, I see this is of the time, but the embroidery, which is in a completely different state as the rest of the piece, I think is actually 18th century. And it would have been absolutely possible for the Vichy dressmakers to have gone out and found some very interesting embroidery pieces and then repurposed it. And this, of course, makes this piece a unique one of a kind. So her costume is very beautiful, but you look at the bodice, it's classic 1870s, late 1870s. The males is very authentic to the 18th century, and I'm going to turn them around so you can see the back. Oops, no, you're not supposed to play yet. You can see the back is classic 18th century with the nice flat gold cording and lots of buttons. Here you can see the front of her dress. Again, it's very, very reminiscent of the 1870s decoration. There was probably a lot of tulle that we can see that is a little bit of surviving there, but the embroidery is in impeccable condition. Now, another thing that I am just wild about on these dolls are the original wigs. And this curling here really helps me date. I think I'm right on with the style of the era that I'm putting this at. He has this adorable tricorn hat, and at first you think this is hair, but this is actually a feather. And then look under there, you can see it's just full, big, beautiful mohair wig. So I think, and then the final thing we're going to talk about is clothing, is instead of, and this is something we see regularly on the Vichy pieces, they don't actually put stockings on them. They will cover the legs with silk and then use all this incredible braid, little soutache braid, or just braid, soutache is braid, to create a wonderful design. And actually, it is kind of a great idea, because for us today, if this was a silk stocking material, it would have probably have disintegrated. When I see an item like this, I think, how could you possibly play this in a home? But think about going to a ball, and you walk into the ballroom, and you let 3 or 4 of these go, and you could really get the party started. So we're going to start the party. Well, I have saved, I think, the most important piece for last. And it's certainly important, not necessarily for the mechanism, but for the sheer volume of this. And I will also say an absolutely spectacular face. So I would think that this Théroude waltzer is a good 26 inches tall. And we did try to get her to work, and she does work, but for filming purposes, she is such a big girl that we feel in this little space that, it's not a little space that we have to work with, but at this space that she would get out of control, and we don't want to do anything to hurt her. But the face is a unique face. I would call this, if this was a French fashion doll, I would call this a portrait face. And most likely it's a portrait of the Empress of France. And I would probably attribute this, and David and I agreed, probably Barrois would be the maker of the head. Very, very unique face, one that I have not seen before except on this piece. It does a standard thing that all of the single waltzers that we've looked at, smells the flowers, fans herself with the fan, but this is big. And I think in my career, I don't think I've ever seen another as big as this. And I think David would agree to that. Classic wheels and all of that, and original clothes. They are fragile, but the beauty is they're still here with us. But this is, I think, one of the treasures in the Nunez collection, and that's why I decided to save this piece for last. Well, doll friends, I hope you've enjoyed the mechanical and musical marvels of the Susan and Lou Nunez collection. And it was, for us, it was a great pleasure to actually get to play with these, because normally they're under glass, but it's so fun and gratifying to hear and see the 19th century come to life for all of us. We will be back later with more treasures. Bye-bye, doll friends.
Remember to like, subscribe, and hit that notification button.